choose joy. So today the president's got 2 rallies in Arizona, and the vice president has 2, and one is in Maine and one is in Pennsylvania. And Joe Biden, no public events on the calendar yet, Brian.
Right, yeah, he wants to prepare for the debate 4 days. This is a guy who thinks he won already. He did not understand or get word that there were grassroots, these parades. One took place 60 miles from Seaford, Long Island, all the way to Montauk. There was a parade for President Trump with vehicles in Philadelphia suburb. In West Texas, they lined up thousands of vehicles. They also did the same thing in Alabama. In Tennessee, there was a car parade. In Indiana as well. These aren't even organized on the campaign level. These are just people getting in touch with each other through social media before their accounts get frozen, and they travel together in support of a president they plan on voting for.
Well, it's interesting. In my town, they had kind of an unofficial one of those over the weekend as well. You know, as you look at the polls, and it does look as if they are tightening right now. Privately, the Trump people say that they're going to do better than the public polls are showing right now. And the race is closer. I've got some seasonal allergies today. The race is closer in Arizona and Pennsylvania than the public polls. It's all part of the polar coaster, which is how the DNC chair Tom Perez characterized it yesterday. Watch this.
Do you think the Democratic Party has done enough in the midst of this pandemic to drive up either easy balloting or ability to go to the polls?
Well, I always caution people never get on the polar coaster. We take nothing for granted, and the enthusiasm, Margaret, has been all over the country. We have a lot more work to do, but we're expanding the battlegrounds. We're competing in places like Arizona, Texas, Ohio, Iowa, Georgia, and elsewhere. And that's because we have a candidate who I think is just uniquely qualified to bring people together. We have more work to do, and folks got to get out there and vote.
And it's interesting because the Trump people feel that the strides they've made in the last 4 years with voter registration favors the president, as does the fact they've got a great get-out-the-vote machine, which they've been working on for 4 years, Ainsley.
Well, a lot of people have already voted, but you can't, when you look at these polls, even though Biden's ahead, that was a big surprise in 2016. I mean, the polls consistently projected Hillary Clinton to win, and if you look at Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, she was pegged as the heavy favorite in those 2 states, and in the end, both of those were taken by Trump.
Yeah, the president's not going to be outworked. What he's doing in terms of appearances is just stunning. It's staggering, especially when compared to, even Jake Tapper brought up, my goodness, you cannot say when Chris Coons says he's been working very hard on the campaign trail, you cannot take Saturday off, do 1 appearance Sunday, take 4 days off and say you're working hard on the campaign trail. But that's your tactic. Go ahead and see how it works for you. Reince Priebus, who I'm happy to see is back for the Trump people, he came out and says, you know, easy on the polls. They're complicated. There's some things happening there that were not happening before, one of which is the president is 30 points ahead in rural parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota. And that's very hard to quantify, and they don't seem to show up in the polls. We'll see what happens because it's very similar. It's very similar to what we saw in 2016, but we know with the pandemic, everything has changed. So one area in which, no question, Democrats benefit, they have outraised Republicans all across the country, from Senate to congressional races to the presidential race. 2-1, 432 million cash in hand for Biden, 251 for Trump, but there could be a big announcement today for the Trump campaign. Meanwhile, a busy week ahead on Capitol Hill. The Senate Judiciary Committee will vote on Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation to the Supreme Court Thursday.
That's right. The Senate is also set to vote on 2 COVID bills tomorrow and on Wednesday, Ainsley.
But up first, a vote to subpoena Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey after the outrage sparked by blocking the report on Hunter Biden. And Griff Jenkins is live in Washington to break down this entire week for us. A lot going on down there, Griff.
It is. Good morning, Brian, Ainsley, and Steve. And Washington's going to be so busy, Steve, I don't know how they're going to properly commemorate your birthday, but it's only Monday. Maybe they'll figure it out. And you have a lot of things happening. The Senate Judiciary Committee now will vote to confirm Judge Barrett on Thursday. But before that, the full Senate is voting on McConnell's $500 billion skinny COVID relief bill. But even if that passes, Speaker Pelosi isn't likely to acknowledge it in the House because it isn't the product of her negotiations with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. In the biggest fireworks, Ainsley, you mentioned, may come when the big tech CEOs under fire for censorship come to Capitol Hill to face a grilling. Meanwhile, it is 15 days to the election, and both candidates are in full attack mode. In Nevada, the president zeroing in on the New York Post Hunter Biden story, suggesting the Bidens are capitalizing on Washington influence peddling. Watch.
Joe Biden is and always has been a corrupt politician. He always has been. And as far as I'm concerned, the Biden family is a criminal enterprise.
Now, while most of the Post story remains unverified at this point, the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, Ron Johnson, is demanding the FBI provide answers.
The FBI has a duty to inform us. If they believe this is maybe, Russian disinformation, they should give us a defensive briefing. Why did they sit on it? Are they covering up just because Hunter Biden might be engaged in things that also maybe should have been investigated and possibly prosecuted?
This as Biden in North Carolina ramped up his signature attack on the president over his pandemic response.
Trump said in one of his rallies, "We've turned the corner." And my grandfather would say, "This guy's gone around the bend if he thinks we turned the corner." Turn the corner. Things are getting worse. He continues to lie to us about the circumstances.
But Biden is off the trail today, presumably preparing for the debate Thursday, while President Trump will hold not one, but two separate rallies in Arizona. Brian, Ainsley, Steve.
It's unbelievable, Griff. Thanks so much. It's unbelievable. You watch all these Sunday shows, you see what's going on in the other networks. They've totally avoided a story that is really, at the very least, deserves some exploration and explanation. For example, the New York Post story that Griff just described. You're not talking about an opinion. You're talking about a laptop with emails. If the Russians were behind it, how did they find that Delaware repair shop to drop it off in and have somebody named Hunter Biden sign off on the invoice? How come you have emails that have nothing to do with Russia? They're actually not denied by the administration. That looks as though the son is setting up a corporation with the father involved or to benefit from, at the very least you have questions about, from China officials. This is incredible that not only are people ignoring it, these social media companies who have been basically a vehicle to post what you think and a chance for you to take in what you read has now frozen accounts that look at emails that have not been denied by the people that wrote them. And they're still trying to get these laptops back. Here's what the report, when he shut it down, the one reporter asked him a question about it and he gets attacked personally. It was from CBS. Last week. That's it. And then when he finally comes out to get ice cream, listen to what these reporters are shouting at Joe Biden.
We got one vanilla, one chocolate, but I wanted to get what we call black and white, but we're going to move it. In other words, we're going to split it.
So
how embarrassing is that?
So rather than ask about court packing or Hunter Biden or the laptops,
or
what flavor milkshake? Hello?
I know one headline says the media is softer than that milkshake when it comes to asking Joe Biden some tough questions. When the president's team was asked over the weekend how he's going to handle the debate, Jason Miller was on Fox News Sunday, and he said that the president is going to give him Biden some room to answer questions on foreign policy, things about his past, the endless wars that he supported. He wants to talk about Trump's success on the peace deals and whether the emails bearing Hunter Biden's name are authentic.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. If those debates comes up, I'm looking at these topics, and we'll talk about it more at 7 o'clock. I get it, Eastern time. But where's foreign policy? Where's the economy? We're talking about American families, race in America, climate change. Who wrote this up? Barack Obama?
That's what the moderator chose.
And this moderator, whose parents are Democratic donators, who was a registered Democrat before, who has the most hostile questions possible to Kayleigh McEnany or whoever the press secretary is, and the president, how does she get picked to be the moderator at this debate? It's incredible.
What a week. And it's just starting right now. So anyway, 6:11 now here in New York City, and Jillian has come.
Happy birthday, Steve.
Thank you.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I didn't know that. Surprise. Yeah. All right, let's go to your headlines right now, and we begin with a Fox News alert. Police arresting a man with a knife after a standoff at Paramount Pictures in Hollywood. The LAPD says the man ran into the studio lot after they tried arresting him for sexual assault. Police hit him with a taser and beanbag rounds before shooting at him as he ran off. He then barricaded himself inside a building before getting arrested. He's now in the hospital with unknown injuries. The man charged with throwing a burning piece of wood inside a police car with an officer inside remains in jail this morning. Seattle police releasing video of the attack from last week.
Seattle police, stop, dude!
The officer shooting at suspect Brian Leal as he ran away. The officer was treated for minor burns. Police arrested Leal in a parking garage. He is due in court on assault charges next week. A top White House official secretly traveled to Syria for talks to free 2 American hostages. The negotiations centered on former Marine and journalist Austin Tice, who disappeared while reporting in 2012, and Maj Kamamaz, a therapist who went missing in 2017. At least 4 other Americans are still in captivity in Syria. The talks were held earlier this year in Damascus.
He hit that homer, one high five, forearm to forearm, and popped out his shoulder.
Oh, man.
He had to go back in and pop it back in. He says it's no big deal. I kind of think it's a big deal. I don't know. I think it's got a high pain threshold.
Sounds painful.
Do it after the World Series.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Jillian. Well, the next presidential debate moderator is under scrutiny for her family's donations to Democrats, as Brian was alluding to earlier. This is cause for concern ahead of Thursday's matchup, or is it? We'll ask the Hill's media reporter Joe Concha right after the break.
Well, the moderator of the Thursday debate, Kristen Welker, under intense scrutiny ahead of the Thursday showdown. New York Post reports she has deep Democrat ties coming from a family that has donated tens of thousands of dollars to Democrats over the years. President Trump reacted to the report and accused Welker of being terrible and unfair. Here to discuss, media reporter for The Hill, Joe Concha. Joe, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing okay. So what are you expecting Thursday?
I expect what we've seen already, Steve, in all of these town halls in terms of a fixed fight going in. Let me read to you the top issues, according to Pew Research, in terms of a poll they did. What voters care about most: economy, health care, Supreme Court, coronavirus, violent crime, foreign policy, gun policy. You'll never guess how many of those topics were chosen by Kristen Welker going into this final debate, a crucial debate. Nothing on any of those topics whatsoever, which is amazing, including health care. Instead, we're going to talk about climate change again, which occurred in the first debate, and that's fine if you want to bring that up, but for it to be in 2 debates, and all the other topics seem to be in Joe Biden's sweet spot while being troublesome for President Trump. I'm not saying that he's not a big boy and he can't answer the questions, but at the same time, the disconnect here between what the media thinks is important and what voters think is important is so abundantly clear based on these debate topics. And as far as ties to the Democratic Party, Kristen Welker's dad alone donated $20,000 to President Obama's reelection effort. So what does that tell us here? I mean, can we just pick a moderator, please, that doesn't have any ties to the Democratic Party like we did with Steve Scully, who was an intern for Joe Biden, who worked for Ted Kennedy, who was apparently getting advice from Anthony Scaramucci? What are we talking about here? We can't trust the process, it seems, anymore, Steve.
Well, you know, and you look at Steve Scully's problems and you look at the reaction that Chris Wallace got as well. Maybe going forward, they should have 2 moderators, somebody from the left, somebody from the right, and they each interrogate the other candidate.
That's a great idea. Or maybe just take the moderators out altogether, put them in there for 90 minutes like a steel cage match, and just let them go at it. I mean, would that be the worst idea in the world? I don't think so. Yeah. Maybe you need a referee, but at the same time, that's a great idea, actually. Instead of just trying to put in somebody who the Commission on Presidential Debates is saying is objective, just put somebody who's definitely for one candidate, definitely against one candidate. You'll get an equal number of questions in terms of toughness, and everybody wins.
Okay, let's work on that for next time. Okay. Meanwhile,
okay, sounds good.
Okay. The New York Post has looked at some of the Twitter senior execs' anti-Trump tweets, and we're going to put them up on the screen. What does this tell you? I mean, they obviously hate Trump. What does this tell you about the mentality at Twitter?
Well, it tells me, Steve, that, Silicon Valley makes Michael Moore look like a featured CPAC speaker, right? I mean, we're seeing it at Facebook and we're seeing it at Twitter. Senior executives who have actually even worked for Joe Biden in some cases. In other cases, like that great report by John Levine of the New York Post, shows that it is overwhelmingly Democratic. I think it's something like 90% of donations out of Twitter and Facebook have gone to Democrats, which isn't surprising considering that, it's right near San Francisco and it's mainly made up of young people. But here's the problem here, Steve. Pew Research did another great survey in terms of where people get their news from. And 62% of adults get their news from social media. They scroll through Twitter. 3/4 get it through email pushes from social media. So when you say, well, the media is, it's ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, it's more and more social media, and that is what's influencing at this point. And the influencers are overwhelmingly Democrat and trying to push an election in one direction. Anyway, Steve, got to go back to the chiropractor today, unfortunately. You're turning 40 today, I believe. And as you know, when you hit that magic number, everything goes south.
Tell me about it. My voice is the first thing to go today. All right. Joe, thank you very much.
I like it. You sound like one of the sisters on The Simpsons. It's a rough touch.
Lisa.
Good stuff.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Meanwhile, gym owners in New York State taking the governor to court, calling to end his emergency powers amid the lockdowns. Up next, hear from a guy leading the charge.
Europe enforcing new restrictions and curfews to curb the spread of its second wave.
Trey Yingst joins us live with whether the U.S. could see future lockdowns. Trey?
Todd, Jillian, good morning. When it comes to Europe, the entire continent started to reopen after beating the first wave of COVID-19. Now, a second wave of the virus is threatening to overwhelm medical systems across the region. The country of Italy announced new restrictions just yesterday after reporting more than 11,000 cases in 24 hours. Now mayors will have the ability to close public squares at 9 p.m. and restaurants will only be allowed to serve food within a certain time frame. Neighboring France also stands out among a growing list of countries fighting off new infection spikes. French officials confirmed more than 32,000 new coronavirus cases over the weekend during a 24-hour period. A curfew did go into place this weekend, affecting 20 million people in Paris and 8 other cities. Overall, Europe has seen more than 250,000 deaths from COVID-19, as German Chancellor Angela Merkel is warning of difficult months ahead. Now, the United States is also expected to face difficult months, as Coronavirus Task Force member Dr. Anthony Fauci outlined what it would take to force the country into another lockdown. Here's what he had to say last night on 60 Minutes.
How bad would things have to get for you to advocate a national lockdown?
They'd have to get really, really bad. First of all, the country is fatigued with restrictions. Put shutdown away and say, we're going to use public health measures to help us safely get to where we want to go.
Dr. Fauci has repeatedly warned Americans about getting complacent in their fight to slow the spread of COVID-19. With vaccine and treatment development around the corner, there is hope for the American people and the entire world. Todd, Jillian?
Trey Yingst live for us in Jerusalem. Trey, thank you.
And now joining me is author of COVID, The Politics of Fear and the Power of Science, Dr. Mark Siegel. Dr. Siegel, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Jillian, good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so let's take a look at this new number. On Friday, the U.S. cases hit the highest since July 29th. That's more than 70,000 cases in a day. 21 states have hit a 7-day peak for new coronavirus cases. You can see them there on the map. You know, you heard Dr. Anthony Fauci say it would have to be really, really bad for another lockdown to happen. What in your mind does that mean?
I agree with Dr. Fauci on this. I think there's tremendous costs to lockdowns, not just the fear that it creates and the anxiety, as I write in my book. That issue alone, 28% of Americans are currently depressed because of the previous lockdowns, but there's also delays in cancer screening of up to 80% decrease in screenings. There's people not getting dental care, mental health services, medical care. All of this, plus the economic costs, makes it a disaster. And Jillian, besides which, the numbers of the new cases are skyrocketing in the U.S., as you just pointed out, but consider that, per the CDC, the hospitalization rate remains about the same, and the death rate is about the same or even a little bit lower. We're really monitoring those numbers really closely in the public health community because though we do not want mild cases, And we do not want our younger people to get infected. Of course, much more concerning to the medical community is hospitalizations, because that makes it impossible for hospitals to function. We're not there. And as long as we can keep that from happening, and I agree with Dr. Fauci also, we need the public health measures we need compliance. I was walking around New York yesterday. I saw everybody huddling together again. We need physical distancing. We need people to wash their hands, and we need the masks.
Absolutely. Okay, so Pfizer has this COVID-19 vaccine rolling off the production line as the drug maker prepares to apply for emergency use by late November. Let's go ahead and take a look at this statement. This reads, quote, "We estimate we will reach this milestone in the third week of November. We are operating at the speed of science. This means we may know whether or not our vaccine is effective by the end of October." Dr. Siegel, talk about the timeline and how important this is.
I'm very excited about this, Julian, and I think it kind of underlines the point. There's been so much politicizing of this, when in reality the science is proceeding at science's pace. I agree with Pfizer's statement. Here's what they're going to do. They're looking at effectiveness first. In other words, at the end of this month, they're going to figure out if you were encountering the virus, did that vaccine protect you? It's called events. By the end of the month, they're going to find out if in the 15,000 plus people, it decreased your risk of getting infected. Then they spend several weeks looking at the safety data before they'll get the emergency use authorization. Was it safe? Did people tolerate it without severe side effects? That comes next, and that leads you to about the week before Thanksgiving, if all goes well, that they would get an emergency approval. Then healthcare workers like me will get it, and people in high-risk groups.
All right, so real quick, about 30 seconds before we go, though. So if all goes well and this gets approved, when do you think the general population might be able to see a vaccine? I know it's hard to give a specific timeline, but how long does that normally take?
That's a great question. So I'd say healthcare workers, end of November, elderly start to get it, people in poor communities, high risk, and then about probably January, February, and March, you'd start to see a big rollout to hundreds of millions of doses around the country. I'd say early spring, late winter.
Okay, well, we'll certainly keep our fingers crossed that everything continues to go well. I know you'll be following it, as we will as well. And, of course, your new book, congratulations on it, COVID, The Politics of Fear and Power of Science. Dr. Siegel, thank you very much.
My pleasure, Julian. Thank you for having me.
Yep. Todd?
Time now, 26 minutes after the hour. The social media censorship of the Hunter Biden story striking a nerve. Liz Peek says companies like Facebook and Twitter are working overtime to elect Biden and protect the swamp. She joins us live next.
Newspaper in the country, the New York Post, which was censored by both Facebook and Twitter.
Why should Twitter have the power to be able to silence my entire 1.8 million person audience just because a news story changes?
Joe Biden stacking his transition team with former executives from top social media platforms like Facebook and like Twitter, those same platforms that limited access to the explosive New York Post expose. Fox News contributor Liz Peek says the most influential execs have a lot to gain if Biden wins. She joins us now. Liz, always great to see you. How concerned are you by the seeming revolving door between big tech and the Biden campaign?
Well, look, I don't think anyone is terribly surprised. This is a group. These tech companies have been in bed with Democrats for a long time. The Obama campaign, if you remember, also hired Google and Facebook executives. So this is not a great surprise. But I think really it just confirms that Facebook and Twitter have their thumb on the scale. And I think, honestly, this suppression of the Hunter Biden story just goes beyond anything anyone could have imagined. To shut down the New York Post. And by the way, their account, as far as I know, is still suspended because they have refused to take down these stories. And remember, Todd, the Joe Biden campaign has not refuted the essential elements of this story. That's the incredible thing. So there's every reason to think it's true. And that Twitter and Facebook are working extremely hard to make sure that American voters don't know the truth about Joe Biden, that he, in fact, may have been lying about not knowing about his son's activities in China and Ukraine, where he was the point person for the Obama administration. I mean, honestly, I have never seen something in my entire life so corrupt and so offensive as what these social media giants are doing. I think everyone is offended. Even some of my Democrat friends are saying this is too much.
On this topic, Liz, you have a new op-ed out. It is titled "Facebook, Twitter's Censorship Brazenly Protects Biden, Endangers Our Democracy." You sort of touched on it in your last answer, but go into a little bit more detail, if you could, on how specifically our democracy is endangered.
Well, look, if people only hear one side of the story, and by the way, if they watch CBS and CNN, MSNBC, only read the New York Times, they're going to get only one side of the story. Our news media has become increasingly one-sided, increasingly biased. There is no pushback. Thank heavens, honestly, for Fox News, because it does present the other side of the story. So we're getting only one story from the traditional media. Social media historically has been a neutral platform. In the last 6 months, I would say it has become abundantly clear that that is no longer the case, as they have censored stories, particularly about the coronavirus, and stories from doctors who don't agree with Dr. Fauci, and who present a more hopeful or positive view of the virus and the damage that it is doing.
Right.
So I must say, I think the problem is it's so frustrating because there is no alternative at this place to Twitter, at this point, to Twitter and Facebook. Those of us who are on those platforms really have no place else to go. And we know that legislators aren't going to protect us. Democrats are in bed with these companies. They get lots and lots of campaign money from these companies. So they make a lot of noise about how they're going to rein them in. They don't mean it. They're not going to do anything. And they're certainly not going to do anything. And this is part of the story, when these companies are supporting their cause.
And Liz, to that end as well, I think we'd be naive to think that legacy media doesn't get their quote unquote marching orders, i.e. in our business, story ideas from what they see on the social media platforms. And if all they are seeing is stuff that is filtered out by extremely biased individuals who make no contention that they are not anything other than biased individuals, you have what you have. And that's the situation we're in. Liz Peek, we appreciate your insight, as always, on topics like this. Please keep coming back, because I know our viewers love this information and they need this information.
Thank you.
Jillian, over to you.
A California woman, as weather conditions could fuel those fires today. It's just devastating, Janice.
It really is. For months now, we've been dealing with the potential for wildfire danger across the West. The numbers are still up there in terms of large wildfire danger across portions of California, up towards the Northwest, the interior West, and Colorado as well, as you pointed out, where we have explosive wildfires there. Unfortunately, we're not getting into the regions we really need to see the moisture over California and the desert Southwest in towards the Central Rockies. Northern Rockies are getting the moisture, so that's going to help things in that region, but really not getting as far south as the Central and Southern Rockies, unfortunately. Now, we are getting some snow. The snow is coming across portions of the Northern Plains, Northern Rockies, in towards the Midwest. First big snowstorm of the season is on its way for Tuesday and Wednesday. You can see the forecast precipitation. I mean, that's a foot or more, and not only in the mountains. We're talking about in lower elevations as well. So that's going to be something we're going to watch over the next couple of days. And then we have a cold front moving across the East Coast that's going to bring the potential for some showers. No snow here in the Northeast just yet. I'll keep you posted on that.
But would you believe, JD, this weekend, no joke, I put my snow equipment in my car.
Of course you did. He is the most prepared person on the face of this earth.
I wanted it out of the garage. I wanted to clean the garage.
I hope it doesn't jinx us.
Sorry.
I'm blaming you.
I have failed.
Yeah, it's Todd's fault. Everything's Todd's fault. Thanks, Janice. It is 36 minutes after the hour. Taxpayers could be on the hook for Chicago's budget gap, the property and gas tax hikes the mayor is considering.
And did you see this? Grieving family staging a mock funeral with a casket full of Governor Cuomo's coronavirus book covers. Those New Yorkers vowing to hold him accountable. That story next.
Good morning. Welcome back. Grieving families hold a mock funeral for New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's integrity over the state's COVID-19 response.
Cheryl Casoni from our sister network Fox Business joins us live with the backlash. Cheryl.
Yeah, guys, good morning. A silver casket and 6,500 copies of New York Governor Cuomo's new book were dumped in front of a Brooklyn nursing home. This is that mock funeral. That's the same number of people, by the way, who died in nursing homes from coronavirus under the governor's watch. The organizers said that the governor has not given them an independent investigation after a March 25th mandate that prevented nursing homes from turning away positive COVID patients.
And Chicago's mayor is considering quite a plan, right?
Yeah. Oh, this is going to be fun. You know, a lot of cities are dealing with budget gaps, but this one's pretty big. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is considering a $94 million property tax increase, 300 layoffs of city workers, and a gas tax hike and debt refinancing to deal with her $1.2 billion budget deficit. Now, while she's keeping her plans under wraps, the Chicago Tribune's reporting that she could also cut $77 million in unfilled jobs and go after teacher pensions. We're going to hear from her Wednesday. It's going to get really fiery in Chicago.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
At least it seems like it's equal opportunity anger that's going to be coming her way. Meantime, a big announcement by American Airlines.
Oh, this is something else, guys. Finally, here we go. The MAX is back. American Airlines is set to return the Boeing 737 MAX to service by the end of the year. The airline's going to offer a daily MAX flight between Miami and New York. That's going to start probably December 29th. Now, remember, the FAA still has not given final approval for the jet to return to service, but it is expected to happen fairly soon. This jet has been grounded since March 2019 after 2 deadly crashes. But that's the plan as of now from American.
All right. We'll continue to follow it. Cheryl, thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
You bet.
All right. Another election interference situation could rock the vote from space. Celebrity astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson taking to Instagram warning a refrigerator-sized asteroid may buzz cut Earth literally one day before Election Day.
But he said it's not big enough to cause any harm. NASA says its chances of actually striking Earth is less than 1%. It's just, you know, it's timing. It's like the day before the election.
Seriously?
Just another thing to add to the list.
Because 2020 has been boring so far, said no one.
It is 43 minutes after the hour right now. Joe Biden bragging about an endorsement that never happened. Social media has something to say on this, and we'll tell you about that next.
And speaking of bragging, Kilmeade, our Giants are now in the win column. Break them up.
You won.
Right. I don't know why they didn't kick the extra point if I'm Washington and try to win in overtime. Right? It makes no sense, especially in that division. Hey, let me tell you what's coming up. Philadelphia played good, but not good enough. Sorry, Jillian. Really, coming up straight ahead, we are checking in with the White House. Mark Meadows, Chief of Staff, will be with us live. The Senate today or this week will be voting on a $500 billion COVID relief bill. Problem is, Nancy Pelosi wants $2.4 trillion. What's included in that for the American people, should it indeed pass? Stuart Varney breaks down the numbers. We have 48 hours to get it done, according to the Speaker. And speaking of the Speaker, House Speaker Pelosi says she hasn't spoken to the President in a year. What's going on in Washington? It turns out they really don't like each other. Newt Gingrich on the collapse of civility in politics. And GOP congressional candidate Kimberly Klacik wants to represent Baltimore. You remember when her campaign ad went viral? Well, thanks to that, she's fundraising now. She's made $6 million or earned it or raised it. She joins us with her latest on her race on Capitol Hill to pull off a big upset. Plus, a World War II veteran getting a much-deserved standing ovation and a shout-out from the president.
100-year-old veteran right here.
Ocala, where it took place. Meanwhile, that veteran will join us live. Don't miss a minute. Fox and Friends coming your way. In fact, this is going to be an impactful week. Please get dressed, everybody.
I do not have access to my Twitter account because I tweeted a widely reported story that changed a couple hours later, and Twitter then comes to me and they say, we're going to deactivate, not deactivate, but lock out your account unless you delete this story.
Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk says his account is being held captive by Twitter. Kirk was locked out after he tweeted about Pennsylvania rejecting thousands of mail-in ballots.
Now, here's the deal. An amended version of the story said that people requested multiple ballot applications after Kirk's tweet said that people submitted multiple ballots. All right, now it is a throwback to the last election with a slight twist. Wow. An Ocala, Florida rally crowd breaking into chants of lock him up after newly surfaced alleged Hunter Biden emails emerged.
Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7, Sirius XM 115 here with more. Carly, I'm shocked people talked about this on social.
Yeah, well, during an election cycle, unlike anything we have ever seen before, the president's rallies are starting to sound pretty familiar to the 2016 presidential election. As a matter of fact, at one point during his rally in Carson City yesterday, somebody shouted, "Lock her up." The president stopped and corrected, saying, "No, lock him up." So he is working very hard on his new line of attack that Joe Biden and his family are, corrupt Washington insiders, and he is an outsider that's going to continue to drain the swamp. The president will be very busy this week on the campaign trail, holding 2 rallies in Tucson and Prescott, Arizona today, rallies later this week in Erie, Pennsylvania, as well as North Carolina, guys.
Okay, so Joe Biden touting an endorsement, but it may not have happened, right?
Yeah, that's right. So during the town hall last week, Joe Biden said that the Boilermakers Union, which represents tens of thousands of American workers, endorsed him. Turns out that is not true. Let's take a listen to that moment from the town hall last week.
Tell them the Boilermakers overwhelmingly endorsed me, okay? So the Boilermakers Union has endorsed me because I sat down with them in great detail with the leadership exactly what I would do.
Yeah, so the truth is the Boilermakers have not made a union-wide endorsement, but the chapter that was being discussed during the town hall, Boilermakers Local 154, they endorsed President Trump. Former Pennsylvania Congressman Lou Barletta posting a tweet saying someone should tell Joe Biden that here in PA, the Boilermakers he claimed are overwhelmingly supporting him, endorsed President Trump last month. So that was a big moment during the town hall for Joe Biden, saying that, the Boilermakers are not concerned about our energy policy so much that they endorsed me. But that turned out, guys, not to be true at all.
All right, this next story, very serious. Could there be a new Die Hard in the works? What is this all about?
Okay, all right. Well, Rumor Willis, Bruce Willis's daughter, set social media on fire this weekend when she posted on Instagram, "Die Hard is back." And she included what looked like a trailer for an upcoming movie. So, of course, social media went absolutely nuts. Unfortunately for fans of this movie, she was actually teasing a commercial featuring her father for Die Hard batteries. Take a look. See you guys.
All right, time now 52 minutes after the hour. A rally for free speech turns violent when suspected Antifa members show up.